We just saw a crazy draft lottery. We got a special guest for the first time on the channel, Whirls from Hoops All In. We do our weekly episode every week, but man, let's talk about it. Dallas gets the first overall pick, San Antonio 2, and Philly 3, and then so on and so forth. We'll talk about it all, but let's address the elephant in the room. And I mean, you look like you got something to say, so I'm gonna give it the floor to you.
The NBA thinks we're really fucking stupid. They think we're fucking stupid. Now we know the real reason why Nico Harrison and the Dallas Mavericks traded Luka to the Los Angeles Lakers. This was all orchestrated by the NBA. Adam Silver called up the Dallas Mavericks and said, "Hey, listen, we're gonna ask you guys to do something crazy. Trade Luka to the Lakers, and in
Mhm.
return, we're gonna make sure that you guys get the number one overall pick in this year's draft." So really, in reality, the Mavericks traded Luka for Anthony Davis and Cooper Flag. I think any general manager would do that trade. So not only it was a win-win on both sides. The Lakers get their face of the franchise for the next 10, possibly 15 years, and the Dallas Mavericks get their face of the franchise for the next 10, 15, if not 20 years. We know why this trade occurred. Nico Harrison had to sign an NDA, keep his mouth shut. We know how it works behind closed doors, behind the scenes. Everybody involved had to sign NDAs and keep their fucking mouth shut. Now we see the reason why. And for people who think that this is a strange coincidence, you are a fucking moron. Because teams who get the number one overall pick are teams who are rebuilding, struggling, and looking for a face of the franchise to build around said player. You don't see a guy in Cooper Flag who's going to be possibly a generational talent go to a team that is championship ready, that is a championship contending team outside of a few injuries that happened this season. So literally, the Dallas Mavericks are going to be contending for a title next year and possibly 10, 15 years to come. When Kyrie Irving decides to call it quits, when Anthony Davis decides to call it quits, we see the real reason why the Dallas Mavericks traded Luka Doncic to the Lakers. It was made clear as day today. And I'm going to say it again. If you think that this was just a bizarre coincidence, you are a fucking moron. And I say that with all emphasis in my body. This trade was a work. Adam Silver and the NBA coordinated it. And they said, you know what? We're going to reward the Dallas Mavericks if you do something outlandish because we all know there is no justification to trade a guy like Luka Doncic and you don't even get back a first round draft pick. I don't even think they got a first round draft pick. You trade a guy like Luka, you should get 6, 7 first round draft picks. But now we know why. Now we know why. They traded Luka for Anthony Davis and Cooper Flag. Now we know why. It was a win-win on both sides. Now we know why. Okay, NBA, we see what you're doing now. We understood the assignment, but we know what's going on. We really know what's going on. We ain't dumb.
So I don't know necessarily whose pick this was, but I'm pretty sure this was Dallas's pick.
I think so. Yeah, it
It
was.
jumped it
They had a
jumped
like
up
two, three
it
percent
two
chance.
2%. It was the fourth. This was the fourth lowest odds to jump to number one pick that's ever happened. Even last year, the Atlanta Hawks had a 3% chance. They jumped up. Wasn't really the right year to jump up, but I mean, could you imagine if they didn't trade Luca? Luca Coop? But that's not in the equation anymore. But I mean, from the start of this draft lottery, it was like the Spurs got the 14th pick, the Hawks got the 13th pick, and then everything else was surprise. The Bulls got the 12th pick. The Bulls, let me say, the Bulls have the worst draft luck ever. Like with lottery, they lost a there is one of the NBA media people that I watch the most is a diehard Bulls fan. In 2018, the Bulls lost the tiebreaker that would have been the Luka Doncic pick. The Chicago Bulls just lost a coin flip, which would have been the Dallas Maverick pick. So the Bulls lost Cooper Flag to a coin flip. So that could have been the Chicago Bulls pick, but then like the Blazers, they fell, I'm pretty sure, being the 11th pick, awful. Rockets 10, whatever, they don't need it. Raptors didn't really jump at 9. The Nets fell. The Pelicans fell. The Wizards fell. The Jazz fell. The Hornets were were one of the teams that had top 3 odds to have the first overall pick, and they get 4th behind 3 teams that don't need it. Right? Sixers 3rd pick, amazing for them. And then Spurs 2nd pick. I really thought we were about to see the Spurs get the first pick again, and then obviously Dallas, but I mean, insane. But now let's talk so you're gonna have Kyrie at some point. Kyrie won't be back for the start of the year, I would assume, but you have a lineup of Kyrie, Clay, Cooper Flagg, Anthony Davis, and Derek Lively. I mean, that's a good looking lineup, I will say. Granted, some of those guys are a little older and like Clay, but I mean, you want to talk about defense through that 3 through 5 would be elite. The Spurs, what do the Spurs do? Because in everything I've seen and through my own thing, Dylan Harper was pretty much guaranteed to be the 2nd overall pick. You have De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle already, and Devin Vassell. You can't take Dylan Harper. You can't, because again, you have all those guys. So Ace Bailey seems amazing, but is this a thing where maybe the Spurs trade down to 3 and but then again, at the 3rd pick, it's the Sixers, and the Sixers don't really need a guard because they have Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain. Now, granted, the Sixers kind of should just draft best talent, so I can't imagine Dylan Harper would fall out of top 3. But I mean, those top 3 teams, that's huge. I mean, those are 3 teams that don't need it and shouldn't have gotten a top 3 pick, and they all did over, again, teams like the Hornets, the Jazz, the Wizards, being 4, 5, and 6 as the 3 worst teams in the league, and even New Orleans, who's down to 7, but we know why they were bad. But I mean, 3 teams that are going to get the best 3 players in the draft. In this draft, you wanted to have a top 3 pick. Some drafts, it's you want to have the 1st or 2nd pick. And this year, it's just top 3. And again, it's going to 3 teams that don't need it. They just don't need it. They have so many other things working well for them. And teams like Utah, I don't know what Utah does. I don't know what Brooklyn does. I mean, you as a Brooklyn fan, I mean, you were telling me how you were surprised that they didn't jump. We were texting about it as it happened. And I mean, how do we feel about some of these lower teams, the teams that had the worst record in the league last year, and they fall or don't move at all?
I think the NBA just needs to go back to the worst team gets the 1st round pick. Go back to the NFL model, because I understand that they were trying to decentivize tanking and they want competitive basketball. But again, a lot of NBA fans, including myself, after the tirade went up to start this segment, that this draft lottery has been rigged. And we know it's rigged for a whole bunch of years. We got to keep it 100. But you just mentioned a San Antonio Spurs. Dylan Harper is the 2nd best player to get drafted behind Cooper Flagg. The Spurs do not need a guard. So then they're probably going to have to get Ace Bailey, because they most likely need a wing than a guard. So then if you're the Sixers, okay, well, you're not going to draft Dylan Harper. Do you maybe go with a Con Knipple or maybe Malach? Who knows? But this just doesn't make sense to me, because, as again, you mentioned it, 3 of the top 4 teams do not need a franchise-altering player. They were just injuries away from being playoff teams. So this new model that the NBA constructed doesn't work. And then again, kind of translate a little bit, not to go off topic, but we all know Giannis is going to be a hot name coming up in free agency this summer. Obviously, he's not a free agent, but there's been reports that Giannis is open to playing for another team because he has question marks about his future with the Bucks, a team that has been popping up recently is the San Antonio Spurs. They have the young players. They have the draft compensation. They can put together the most compelling package out of the other 29 teams to land Giannis Antetokounmpo. Because, again, if you're going to restart, you get the 2nd overall pick, which is going to be Dylan Harper. You get all the draft picks, probably pair alongside, a couple of young players that the San Antonio Spurs had, maybe Kendall Johnson, probably maybe if you want to trade away Chris Paul, and they're going to probably reroute him, but everything is tied to something. So it's just very, very bizarre. I would be very, very shocked and surprised if the Spurs or the Sixers do not trade out of those spots, because again, they do not need franchise caliber, players. The Sixers already have MVP and Joel Embiid that won MVP 2 years ago. The Spurs have their future for the next 10, 15 years in Wemby. They don't need another, top altering franchise player. They don't. I would have liked to see again how the top four spanned out. I would like to see the Charlotte Hornets get a top pick, because again, they're a team that's in need, despite them having LaMelo and Brandon Miller. They need another star to kind of gel. Again, coaching and owners and stuff like that is a different story, but it would have been nice to see a team that actually needs a franchise type player to get a franchise type player. Same thing with the Jazz, same thing with the Wizards. Hell, even if the Pelicans won, I would have been okay with that, because there have been rumors about them moving on from Zion. So with how this draft order is constructed, a lot of if they do not make any moves, a lot of these players, these mock drafts, these players are going to be going lower than expected, because again, there is no need for them at certain positions. So I expect, again, the Spurs, if the Giannis sweepstake, continues to heat up and he does request a trade from the Bucks, I expect him to trade that pick to land Giannis. I expect the 76ers to trade away that pick, because they do not need really anybody. It's like I say again, you draft Ace Bailey, you already have Paul George. Unless
I don't know if that's a good thing anymore, though.
So it's just a mess. Like again, my Brooklyn Nets would have been, if they didn't get the top pick, they would have been fine getting the top 3 or 4 pick. That would have been good, because again, this is a deep draft, and even them getting their hands on an Ace Baylor or Devin Harper, or even a VJ Edgecombe, who's a very good play out of Baylor. Watch out for him. Hell, even a Trey Johnson from Texas would have been nice. But we're looking at the big man from Duke, Malach, who again, no scrub, 7'2", 250, got a nice, can defend, block shots, altering, but the Nets they need a franchise player, and he does not scream franchise possible player. Now he could turn into that, but when you're an 8 pick, you don't scream. That doesn't scream, franchise player to me.
Yeah, I mean there's quite a few teams that could use, that could have used a top 3 pick, where you're talking about Utah. I mean, Washington sort of, they got a lot of draft picks the past few years, but they still would have wanted it, of course. The Nets, like you said, I mean, maybe not really the Blazers, but certainly the Bulls. I mean, I don't know. But back to the trading, I think there is a very good chance that the San Antonio Spurs gets traded. Even though I do kind of like Ace Bailey, I think in San Antonio, as a big wing, because that's kind of really the position they're missing, because they got Fox, they got Castle / Vassell, whoever is starting at the 2. And then you got Wemby, and you got like a Jeremy Sohan, or whoever you want to say. Like that wing / forward position is missing. So I mean, maybe you pick Ace Bailey a pick early, or like you said, I mean that. I mean, if I was the Bucks, I would nonstop call the San Antonio Spurs on draft night. I wouldn't leave them alone. I would offer them, like, I mean, obviously you're pretty much giving up Giannis for that, but like, you need to get your hands on that pick. You need to, as the Milwaukee Bucks. The Sixers, though, I would have expected the Sixers to maybe trade out if they got like the 6th pick, because their pick was top 6 protected. So anything below the 6th pick would have went to OKC. Thank God OKC doesn't have another lottery pick as of right now. But I think that if it was maybe not top 3, that the Sixers would look to trade it. But I mean, if you're talking about either getting Dylan Harper or Ace Bailey, I think that Philly, even though they've got Embiid, who's a former MVP, and Tyrese Maxey, who's a former All-Star, you got to just go with best available, because with the way that roster has been heading, you don't know who's going to be on that team in a couple of years. And that could be said for a lot of teams, but like if the third best prospect in this draft was a center, I think the Sixers should still take that center, even though they have a former MVP, but you just don't know what Joel Embiid's future or the future of your team looks like. So I think Sixers have a better chance of keeping this pick instead of San Antonio, but um just because I don't know what they trade. I don't know if attaching that third pick with a Paul George would get someone to bite. Maybe it will because again, it's a top 3 pick and you're getting one of the 3 guys in this draft, but I think we'll see a lot of trades in this when draft night does come around. Now we're still a ways away. We're still in playoffs, but I don't know. There's a lot of avenues that obviously the first pick probably like it's a 99% chance it's Cooper Flag, but that second and third pick that's going to be so intriguing to see how those teams work that out. Man, those scouts and GMs are going to have to work overtime as that time approaches because they've got decisions to make.
Yeah, but also again, it all ties into what's going to go on with Giannis. Because if let's just say Giannis decides to pull a curveball and says, he wants to stay with Milwaukee, loyalty runs deep in his veins. Okay, fine. You're the Spurs. You don't need a Dylan Harper because again, you already have Stephon Castle, last year's Rookie of the Year, Chris Paul, De'Aaron Fox, Shohan Vassell. You do not need any more guards. So if you just mention, okay, that's going to mess up the draft board. They decide to take Ace Bailey because they need help at the wings position. If you're the Spurs, they don't need Dylan Harper's services because they have Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, who was balling before his meniscus injury, Quentin Grimes, who again was balling when he got traded there. So they don't need guards as well. So you have a guy who is talented as Dylan Harper that could slide possibly fourth. And if you're looking at Charlotte, okay, he's not going to start over LaMelo. Maybe he could start at the 2, but you had a guy again who's a projected top 2 pick could slide 4 because the NBA decided to do a little funny business with the draft lottery, and then you're messing up guys' projections for nothing. So it really all depends on what's gonna happen with Giannis. I think that they did it that way. It's like, hey, if Giannis does decide to get a trade, the Spurs are in perfect position to acquire him because, as I said again, they have the most draft picks and players, young players, along with draft compensation to get him. But if he decides to stand pat, a lot of these teams are like, well, we're looking at the draft board. You want to say, again, draft the best available player, but that player is probably not going to see playing time, and that might slow down his development because Bailey's not going to see burn over Fox, over Sean. He might see burn over Sean, but he's not going to see, time over De'Aaron and Fox. He's not going to see time over Castle. He's not going to see time over, maybe a Devin Vassell. So he's sitting there waiting for one of these guys to get hurt and for them, and then for him to start playing. So it really doesn't make sense. I that's why I'm just like, they should just go back to, what? You're the worst team, worst record. You get top picks. Again, I understand you want to decentivize tanking, but it's part of the business of the NBA. You know what I mean? And again, I'm looking at other teams too. Like, damn, like Portland is fucking picking 11th, and they have this guy from Georgia, Aja Newell. Don't know really much about him, but Portland is like, hey, we need impact players now. They're in a rebuild for the next 4 or 5 years. You talk about the Atlanta Hawks, they don't even know what the hell's going on. They're picking 13th. There's been rumors about possibly trading Trae Young because he's in his prime. They had the number 1 pick last year, didn't amount to not much. Again, he's still young. So a lot of these other teams, you're just looking at like, what's going on here? Yeah. You know what I mean? And again, like you mentioned, the Wizards, they just have the worst fucking luck. I don't know if they said something to Adam Silver for them not get top high picks, but it's I don't really know. It's just confusing. Like you said, if these scouts are gonna be like, well, they're literally gonna have to wait and say, okay, what's gonna go on with Giannis because we can draft and scout players because again, really 1 through 5 is pretty much set. But you are in a position to draft need, and when you're so jam-packed at a certain position, you don't want to draft a player who could potentially turn out to be really, really good and stunt his development because he's not going to see that much time on the court unless you decide to trade other players in his position if you feel like that current player is going to be ended up being better than the ones that you currently have on the roster. That's the only thing I think you could do at right now. But other than that, it's like a circus right now for all these 14 teams that are ending up picking in the lottery.
Yeah, I mean, and I did just say that I think we could see some moves, but honestly, the more that I look at it, I feel like when you see like moves being made on draft night, it's because a team like Philly gets the eighth pick and they don't really need it because there's nobody that they love that's still sitting there at eight. So another, one of the younger teams that maybe had the 13th pick tries to jump up a few spots. But I mean, picks 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, and 12, all those teams need those picks. Like, and they're not going to move down with another bad team because they won't have anything to offer other than that pick. And if you're trying to move up, a team's not just going to trade you. Oh, hey, I'll let you move up 2 spots and we'll move down 2 spots just to exchange picks one for one. But I don't know. I mean, that was such a shocking thing. I mean, we talk about again the top three, but you can go all the way down to the 12th pick, and it just it hurts some teams super bad. Again, like the Bulls, the Blazers, the Nets, and then some teams just benefiting for when they didn't need it. The Spurs just had back to back rookie of the years. They're about to get another guy that will probably, if they do draft, will be probably a top five in all NBA or all rookie first team player. The Sixers are loaded. They don't have really money like to end up paying this guy because you have Paul George wrapped up for the next 3 years. You have Joel Embiid wrapped up for the next, I think, 4 or 5 years. And Tyrese Maxey, I don't know how many years he has left, but you know what I'm saying. It's like
Mhm.
just the landscape of how these teams look. It's set up to be such a interesting, draft night. And once these guys are officially on their teams, I mean, I don't know. This draft hurts a lot of teams.
It does. It does. I got a trade proposal for you because
Okay.
again, I'm a Nets fan. Nets
Hmm.
they need a top three pick. A possible guy is going to be a franchise altering caliber player. They have the
Hmm.
eighth pick. Let's just say they call up the Philadelphia 76ers and say, you know what, we want the third pick. We'll give you guys Nick Claxton or Cam Thompson along with the eighth pick, and you give us a third pick. Because again, Daryl Morey and the Sixers, they do not need that high of a draft pick. You mentioned you would like the Sixers to get a backup center because you don't really know the health of Joel Embiid, especially with his constant knee issues. If I'm the Nets, again, they're in complete total rebuild. Trade away Nick Claxton. They just signed him to a nice little extension. You package Nick Claxton. Maybe you also, throw in a Zaire Williams or Keon Johnson, or another young guard who's probably not going to play that much. And then you send him to the Sixers for that third overall pick because to get a guy like Ace Bailey, Rutgers, 6'10, 200 pounds, in my opinion, I think overall Ace Bailey has a higher ceiling than Dylan Harper. Rutgers is just the turnpike over here from where I live in New York. I think
Hmm.
that he would look really good in the black and white, and he would fit that style that the Nets are trying to portray. Again, he could play defense. Obviously, he's very skinny. He's gonna have to put on some pounds, but he will
Hmm.
eventually do that in the NBA. I think that he is a player that you can definitely build a team around. So if I'm the Nets, I call up, Daryl Morey, Nick Claxton, you need a backup center. Your boy Embiid has got some weak ass knees, and we'll give you the eighth pick. You give us the third pick. Boom. Because again, you're trading on need, not best available, because they don't need the third pick.
Yeah, again, it would be nice, but if you're just saying, yeah, we'll give you 8 and Claxton, there's a part of me that the Sixers will look at that and just be like, we still do have Joel Embiid when he's here. Nick Claxton is a $100 million center. Do we want to pay that much to a backup? And like you said, this could be a franchise altering player. And am I willing to trade that for a center that will be a backup for us? Is the only thing that, and that's not just saying for the Nets. Any of these teams, like the teams that are in the Nets range, don't really have anything that these teams like the Sixers or the Spurs would want. The Wizards, what are the Wizards going to give the Sixers? Chris Middleton? Chris Middleton and Paul George, it's probably like this right now. The Jazz, they don't have it. Laurie Markkinen had a rough year and he's getting paid 40 plus million. So that's why I said I think that any of those teams from again like the 4 through 12 range, I don't know how much movement we'll see there because again, they don't have a lot to give up to attach, and jumping into that top three is going to be super hard because again, you're not the first overall pick is not getting traded. I think, although what if the Milwaukee Bucks called up Dallas and said, "Hey, you want Giannis? We want the first pick." What do we think of what do
Ah,
we think about that?
I mean, I think anybody
Does it
would do that shit
happen?
to get Giannis because he's in his prime right now, and again, to him going to the Mavericks instantly makes him a title contender even without Kyrie Irving. But I got to look, that spacing is going to be horrible. Anthony Davis and Giannis, there's going to
But
be no
that
room for Kyrie
defense
to
is
operate, no room for their Max Christie and the other young guards to operate, especially again with Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. That spacing is going to be ferocious. So again,
yeah.
it sounds good on paper. Don't get me wrong. But when you look at it, the force spacing, not a lot of shooting. The only guy who can knock down a shot consistently is AD. Giannis is still working on his jump shot, but it sounds good on paper. But
But I think you
playing it
get to
out,
the
I don't
point
know.
I think you get to the point where it's like if you get Giannis, you're not starting Giannis, AD, and Derek Lively. You're not starting AD would have to play the center unless Giannis will classify himself as the center, which he basically is.
But hold on, let me
Um,
just interrupt you quick. AD has said multiple times he doesn't like playing center. So then you're gonna have to force Giannis to play the center. But Giannis can play center because he's tall and strong. But Giannis's natural position is the forward. So one of those guys is gonna be playing out position. And that's most likely gonna be AD.
I think if you said we're getting Giannis, who again, sure they're both technically power forwards, but both of their games, both of their strengths, Giannis is one of the best rebounders in the league. Giannis is one of the strongest players in the league, one of the most versatile defenders in the league. I'm sure they can share those center minutes and be just fine with each other. But you look at, I mean, it would probably have to be something more than just Giannis for the number one pick, but I mean, it would probably be the number one pick and maybe like I don't know. I don't know what else they would trade, but let's just imagine it's one for one like that. Again,
Mhm.
would be like Kyrie, Clay, PJ Washington, Giannis, and AD. I mean, if that actually happens and the Dallas Mavericks get that phone call, I think about it. Because as good as Coop is, Coop would be awesome to get if Luca was still on this. If you didn't do the Luca trade,
Yeah.
he's still awesome to have alongside AD and Kyrie when he returns. But like Nico Harrison said, he is all for defense, which Coop's a good defense for sure, good defender for sure. But he's an 18-year-old rookie. He's not even a 19 or 20-year-old rookie. He's a guy that shouldn't even be in college yet, and he prioritized winning now by trading a young superstar for an aging superstar. And I think that with what we've seen in the comments we've heard from Nico Harrison, I think that's a real possibility that they think about that more than like it
Okay.
is. Even though the idea might turn people off by seeing Giannis in Dallas or seeing, you know, number one pick get traded. I don't know how often that happens. I can't imagine it's a lot, but I mean, I would if I was the Dallas Mavericks and I got that phone call, I would for sure think about it.
Yeah, yeah, especially to get a guy like Giannis. And again, looking at it from Cooper Flack's side of things, because he's gonna be playing alongside AD, and when Kyrie comes back along with Clay
Mhm.
and Derek Lively, like he is not going to get the bulk load of the shots because
No.
again, a first overall pick is for a guy, franchise altering caliber player. He
Mhm.
has to learn how to make mistakes on the court. And he's not going to be able to grow and develop to the player that he should be. I think that his development might get stunted because again, AD is going to take 15, 20 shots. When Kyrie comes back, he's going to take 15, 20 shots. Clay is going to take his usual 10, 11 shots.
Yep.
Lively's going to have a handful. So that leaves Cooper Flags like, hold on, I'm the number one pick. 5 shots for a guy who's arguably a central generational talent.
Yeah.
So that going to that situation again, it looks good on paper, like win now ready, but you need to go to a situation where a team needs a young star, And that could easily hurt his development because he's not going to get the shots. He's not going to be in rhythm to get accustomed to the NBA speed, the NBA strength. Because again, it's going to be AD's going to get the workload, and then when Kyrie comes back, it's going to be AD and Kyrie, and Clay's going to have to get his touches. And Max Christie as well too. I forgot to get my Max Christie. Max Christie was balling for the latter year for the Dallas Mavericks. He's going to have to get at least 12 shots. So you got Christie, 12 shots, AD, 15, 20 shots. When Kyrie comes back, 15, 20 shots. Clay, 11 shots. Where the hell does that leave Cooper Flag? Flag's going to be happy taking 5 shots a game again. The number 1 overall pick, a guy who's a generational talent? Oh, no. No. So I wouldn't be surprised, like you mentioned, if they trade that pick to say, you know what? Hey, Cooper Flag, first overall pick to the Bucks, Giannis, and again, obviously going to have some more parts and parties and more draft picks and players, but that could also be a real conversation. The Dallas Mavericks, I wouldn't be surprised too if they do pull off the trade to get Giannis, because that'll be more beneficial for Flag's development in the NBA. I think him going to the Mavericks would hurt his development because he just won't get enough shots.
Yeah, but I think as a rookie, he's coming in and he already he knows he's pretty much going to Dallas. He's coming in with the mindset of like, okay, I am a rookie. I am going with, about around a top 15 point guard and top 15 power forward of all time who are still in their prime / maybe leaving their primes in the next couple of years. And what Dallas wants to do. I don't think Cooper Flag is a guy that is like, I'm not going to get my shots, man. I don't want Dallas to pick me like Alex Sarr did to the Hawks last year, because the Hawks had so many centers and he didn't want to go there. So he told the Hawks he doesn't want to play for them. The Hawks didn't draft him. And, that's how he ends up in Washington. But CBS Sports posted the perfect graphic to show how this lottery went, where it's, the top 3 teams that had 14% odds to land the number 1 pick, and then the Mavericks, who had a 1.8% chance, and the Spurs, who had a 6% chance, get the first and second picks. Again, the 2 Texas teams that don't really need it, but I don't know that this next season I can't wait for what the offseason looks like between the draft, free agency, everything like that. Once the start of this next season comes, I'm already excited, and we're not even done with this year yet.
Yeah, it's gonna be definitely a lot of moving parts, a lot of trades happening. I wouldn't be surprised if we see again teams trading down, trading up because of the unorthodox lottery. And also too, new network. NBA is going to be on NBC next year as well too, and then kind of switching gears a little bit, not too far, but Michael Jordan's going to be a special contributor. The NBC's bringing back player lineups, player introductions, which we haven't seen in a long time. So that's bringing back the nostalgia of the game. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm very very excited for next year, man. This is probably going to be one of the most insane, craziest free agencies, draft off seasons in the NBA in quite some time. And last year was nutty. And the year before was pretty crazy. But how everything has shaped up to be, man. And we know again, this wasn't natural. This was, artificially done by the people behind the NBA powers. But hey, it makes for great television.
I do think the flattened odds, which basically is the 3 worst teams in the league, have even chances to get the number 1 pick. I do think we're getting to a point though where it's like, all right, we have seen a lot of teams jump up recently. Originally teams just didn't jump up that much. Like the Bulls jumped up to get Derrick Rose back in 2008. I'm sure there's more, but like we've seen now 2 jumps from teams that should have like the 13th pick jump up into the first pick. I do think it should go back to where the worst team gets 25%. The second worst team gets, I don't know what it is, 18%. The third team gets 14. The fourth, so on and so forth. Just because I do think it gets to a point where like everybody complains about the how the conferences are. The West is so much better than the East. there was a very good chance that this year, maybe Washington, maybe Charlotte, maybe Brooklyn, Toronto, someone like that, even Chicago, could get the first overall pick, and Cooper Flag would be coming out, would be coming out east. But now Cooper Flag is going to Dallas out west, another guy who has all-star slash superstar potential going out west. As we just had Wemby, who's a generational talent, go out there. Even the second pick, the Spurs, Dylan Harper or Ace Bailey, whoever that may be, is also going out west. So I think it gets to this is how we get to the point where some people think that the Western Conference is up here and the East is down here, because you just have you have teams jumping that shouldn't be here. And if you want the East to get better, then you want the East teams, because they are the worst teams, to have the best odds of getting the generational talent or whoever the best prospect in whatever draft it is come to them. But again, we've seen jump ups, and this is the third year in a row now that the San Antonio Spurs have a top 4 pick. Now, granted, the Spurs haven't been good. The Spurs haven't been good, so they're not really jumping that high. But why are the Spurs not one of the teams that didn't fall? And maybe Washington jumps into top 2 or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, whether it's 100% rigged, whether it's 20% rigged, whether it's not rigged at all, I think that it's still going to be a great, these are exciting teams to have these picks. It just isn't what it's just not what these bottom feeder teams would have wanted, obviously, because they want to get their hands in on a top 3 pick. And again, the fact that it went to teams where Dallas was in the finals not even a year ago. We know what happened with their team with Luka being traded and all that. The San Antonio Spurs just got maybe one of the best draft prospects of all time in Victor Wembanyama, a rookie of the rookie of the year for this year. And then Philly, who sure, they don't have much playoff success, but they just had an MVP 2 years ago. They have a 26 point per game scorer, and they have Paul George, who was one of the more underrated players of like all of our generation. So again, it's unfortunate for these the bottom of the barrel teams, but I do think seeing Cooper Flag, Ace Bailey, and Dylan Harper potentially all in win now scenarios is something that we haven't really seen. It doesn't happen very often where a top 3 pick is getting put right into a win now scenario.
But this is the thing with the NBA that I don't like, because with the whole collective bargaining agreement and the whole severe luxury tax penalties, they want to create parity in the NBA. Right. They do not want the same 3-4 teams competing for a championship how it was back in 2016, 17, 18. You're not doing it this way by rigging the draft lottery and again having the top 3 players go to win now situations.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. And so I would not be surprised if there's enough owners for those teams who are not in, high market cities, like the Brooklyn Nets, like the Pelicans, like the Raptors, like the Blazers, the Bulls, the Hawks, those teams who got screwed over and say, yo, we need to do something different with the draft lottery, because it does not make sense, like you mentioned, for teams who are in win now situations to get these top 3 players. No. Something fishy is going on, and I would not be surprised maybe a couple years down the line they go back to how it was before, or there is a change in the collective bargaining agreement. Say, you know what, how we're rigging the NBA draft, we're gonna just change it or whatever, because I think it's based off like ping balls dropping, what the fuck is like combination, however it goes. But clearly this is not working, and like I said again, NBA fans are not stupid. I think a lot of humans are stupid. NBA fans, they're not stupid. They see exactly what's going on. And like I said too, like if I'm a Brooklyn Nets owner, if I'm the Chicago Bulls owner, if I'm the Atlanta Hawks owner, you'd be like, hold on, I'm paying millions of dollars to these players, and then even so, I'm paying also the NBA a little bit of luxury tax, not compared to the Boston Celtics, but I'm still paying you guys some type of luxury tax. What the fuck? Like, you wanted parity and fairness. You're not. This is not the way to go about it. I won't be surprised if some of these NBA owners decide to say, "Yo, we believe a coup's going on, and we want to get to the bottom of it," and then they decide to change the rules. That's
Yeah.
that's my opinion.
Yeah. The CBA, that's a good point. I mean, this with the CBA and stuff and the second apron, because again, if the Spurs keep this pick, they're looking at they're going to be looking at a hefty bill at some point, because you're going De'Aaron Fox is getting paid, Wemby's obviously going to get paid.
Castle's gonna get paid too.
Castle's going to get paid at some point. Vassell's making a pretty penny. I mean, if you keep Sohan, he's a young player who was, 7th overall pick, I think, in 2022.
He's gonna get a Dylan Brooks type contract, a 4-year, $80 million deal, maybe a little bit more than that.
Right. If you keep him, and then you're bringing in maybe Ace Bailey, who is, has the potential to be a 20-point scorer in this league, or Dylan Harper, who's one of the best all-around point guards we've seen in a draft recently. I don't know. It is setting some of these teams up to have, to make some really hard decisions, and maybe that's why they do it. I don't really know. I mean, I don't work for the NBA. I'm not in the room while they're doing this, while the balls are getting picked. But I don't know. I think whether or not, though, it sucks for some of the lower class teams, but it is going to make for some interesting, does Dallas and San Antonio jump into play-in and playoff contention again because of this? If they keep the picks.
Oh yeah, I think so. Because again, I think, like I said, Dallas was just only a couple injuries, and then Wemby right now is ready to win right now. And he's probably gonna be dominating the league for the next 10, 15 years. And they got right pieces around. Oh yeah, easily.
Yeah, because we really didn't see that much of De'Aaron and Wemby when it happened. You give Stephon Castle another year under his belt. Devin Vassell is returning. Whoever this draft pick or whatever you get from the draft pick is coming into. Dallas, they've got some roster building that they need to do after trading Luka, because will be their first offseason without him. But yeah, I mean, it is going. We thought that the West has been a dogfight before. Wait till you got the first overall pick already jumping into play-in or playoff contention, because he's with the Dallas Mavericks, who have, one of the best defenders of our generation and the best handle ever. So, anything else you got?
No, I think I pretty said it all. Fuck Adams is over. Fuck the NBA for ringing the draft lottery. We know what it was, but hey, it makes for great television, right? We're talking about it. It's probably going to be #1 trending worldwide all over social media, because they knew exactly what this was going to cause. And the NBA is all about the business of making money. So here you are.
Well, hey, look at the bright side. I mean, yeah, your one team, the Nets, didn't get a top 5 pick, but your other team is down 10 to my team. So we'll see.
Hey, listen, we've been down before, and look what happened.
We have, and it's not a big lead yet, but I think that's all. Thanks, Worlds, for coming and talking about the draft. It won't be the last time you guys see him on this channel, but
appreciate you for having me.
That we'll see. It'll be a great year in the next year when all these guys get drafted. But we'll see you later.